Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Brittany Morrison. I am a TDSB student and a youth rep from the Black Youth Collaborative. The Black Youth Collaborative is a collective of 20 Black students and 43 Black and ally organizations from across the greater Toronto, from across the GTA, working together to strengthen the education system for Black students experiencing racism and discrimination. I am also joined today by my co-facilitator, Shem.
Hi there, my name is Shem Rule. I recently graduated from a TDSB school called Westview. Westview school. It's a high school in the Jane Finch area. I'm currently in my first year at Trent University, taking international development as my major. And thank you for joining us today. I hope you guys enjoy it.
Great, amazing. Amazing to have two TDSB, a graduate and one that's about to graduate, and just having you all here leading the session and sharing your experiences. So thank you all for the work that you do. Some very positive, strong leaders that do a lot of really solid initiatives in the TDSB. So Shem from the West, Brittany from the East. You know, anytime I get an opportunity to highlight you guys, anyways, I'll stop though. I get overjoyed when I start speaking about you guys. So also my name's Alana Lowe and I'm a student equity program advisor with the TDSB. And student equity program advisors, we pretty much work to support students experiencing any type of discrimination. So, and we kind of do leadership activities to kind of find ways to affirm them within the school space and within the community. To kind of as an opportunity to re-engage and to provide additional supports. So we support things like student clubs, we support student-led conferences, we support train the trainer workshops on equity, different equity topics. So anything that we can do to create platforms for young leaders to shine and for them to be affirmed and celebrated, that's pretty much the job of the Student Equity Program Advisor. Aside from that, I also work with an organization called Stolen from Africa. And they do a lot of really amazing work, including this Black Youth Collaborative that Brittany just talked about. So we always try to keep community involved in some of the stuff that we're doing. Also, I just wanted to say big up to the sponsors. Thank you so much for supporting this session. But before we get started, we are going to start with the land acknowledgement. Land and African contribution acknowledgement.
This land is the territory of the Huron, Wendat, and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississauga of the Credit River. The territory was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. The arrangement between the Iroquois Confederacy and Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Today, the meeting place of Toronto is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on this land. We recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous people on this land. Additionally, in accordance with the International Decade of the People of African Descent and the years beyond, we recognize the historical contributions and the revolutionary acts of stolen Africans on stolen Indigenous land. These ancestors that have departed this land, leaving a legacy of hope and resilience. Due to the horrific historical impacts of colonization, we acknowledge how discrimination and racism is endured by the descendants and embedded in systems and to this present day. On this day and every day, we acknowledge the ongoing global contributions of Africans and specifically Black Canadians to Canadian society.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brittany. So before we get started, I'm just going to go really quickly over the introduction. So when we're talking about Black solidarity or Black student solidarity, we're really talking about how can we support Black students and how can we create the conditions for their success. And what we've realized as a collaborative is that it's really important, especially with families and caregivers and people that are supporting us, is that it's really important that we kind of understand how the system works and how to navigate the system. Because even when the system, you know, we acknowledge that the system was set up at a time where the world didn't understand equity, and at a time where the world didn't really know how to create systems that would be barrier free and wouldn't have challenges for specific groups. So we know that anti-Black racism exists, and unfortunately, we know that Black students are affected in very unique ways. So we think that it's really important that we understand the barriers and challenges that Black students face within the education system, and working with families, parents, and students to kind of find ways to navigate that, so that way we can create the conditions or amplify opportunities for Black students to succeed. Oh, sorry, Shem, and you know what I should probably even say. So we're gonna do a couple activities that kind of highlight those things. And then at the end, we're going to have a quick Q&A for people to share their experiences and to ask any questions. Sorry, Shem.
So now we're going to be playing a game. We'll talk about Black students and family solidarity. It's really talking about how we can support each other and navigate the system to ensure Black students and families are supported in the ways that they should be. To effectively navigate the education system, we should become super familiar with the rules. This next activity will be a group activity to see how best we can do this. Nobody will see your answers, so please participate, and we will figure it out as a group.
Absolutely.
Alana?
Yes. So as Shem said, we want to keep this really interactive and give an opportunity for you all to participate. So let's see. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to www.menti.com and you're going to type in this code 9080373. I'm just going to try it on my phone too to make sure that there's no technical issues here. So you go to www, and maybe we'll also put the website in the chat box. I don't know, Brittany or Shem, can you put the website in the chat box for people just in case? Yes, so it is working. That's wonderful. So what we're going to do is when you go to menti.com, you're going to see there's a page that says ranking, and you're going to have there's 10 options. And what we're going to do is we're going to rank each option based off of the amount of power you think each role has. So on here we have students, principal, guidance, the director of education. We're pretty much going to rank them to see who do you think has the most power in the system versus who do you think has the least power in the system. Okay. So we'll give some people some time to do that. And I'll also, I'll also pull up the Menti here. Okay. So we're going to just give people some time to go to menti.com.
Some people are asking to repeat the code. So the code is 9080 373.
Yep. And we can also, I'll paste it in the chat. Oh, Brittany, it's not, oh, there we go, because I'm sending the message to myself privately. There we go. I put the code in the chat as well. Okay, so we'll give people about 5 minutes to kind of log on to that. Again, it's completely anonymous. We're not going to know who put what. Okay, there we go. Who put what or why. And we certainly won't call on people unless you feel comfortable. But yes, so we've got a little bit of movement. So just for some folks that might have jumped on, because I've noticed that the participant number has jumped here, we're just doing a Menti activity where we are trying to put the roles in the system from who has the most power at the top to who we think might have the least power at the bottom. And to participate in this activity, you go to www.menti.com and you use the code 90, 80, 37, and 3. And I'm going to repaste that information in the chat box. Okay, we've got some movement here. What do you guys think about this, the ranking, Brittany and Shem, without giving answers, obviously?
I think it's interesting, you know what I mean? I'm just really looking. Cause I know that we did this activity, right? As a group.
Yes.
And we did some different things. We did some different things, but it just goes to show, you know what I mean, different way of thinking too.
Absolutely.
I think to add to that too is a lot of adults are in this group, and for our group it was more minors, and to see like the adult perspective versus the student perspective is different too.
Absolutely. Very good points, the both of you. You know, based on your personal experiences and your perspectives, the ranking of this will look very different. And I'm sure even with parents and caregivers, you know, even amongst that grouping, it's going to be different based off of so many things: race, class, neighborhood, religious background.
Yeah, experiences.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because some people be pretending like they the boss and they not really the boss. So based on experiences, man.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so we'll give maybe one more minute before we break this down. Thank you to folks for going to the website and participating. Okay, got some shifts here. First, we had social worker at the top, and now we have the trustee. School superintendents kind of moved their way up too. Okay. Okay, some interesting shifts. Okay, we've got the principal. The principal took it from the trustee. I like that. So you can't have my number one spot. I need that spot. Okay. Okay, this is good. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, so we're gonna jump out of this. And we appreciate people for going through and participating. You can still go on and still rearrange things as you'd like. Okay, I see some movement there. Teachers gotten back up there. I like that. You know what I mean? Because the teachers, you know, they hold the system together in a lot of ways. So I see that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the presentation here. And here's what we have. Now, I think power is very much perception, right? And power, at the end of the day, I know the TDSB is working towards shared leadership. But in some ways, hierarchies do exist. And even though I do believe that the TDSB, you know, in a lot of different spaces, shared leadership is definitely a model that is practiced. In some ways, this would there is kind of like a reporting to structure, right? So mind you, students and families, they don't necessarily report to any of these roles, but it's kind of done in this way. So I'm just gonna go through some of the roles. Or does anybody know, I'll even open it up to parents. Does anyone want to define any of these roles here?
Yeah, probably just raise your hand. I don't know if most of you guys know how to use this thing, right? But just go on more, and then you're gonna see the option of raise hand, and then we'll just acknowledge you from there.
Perfect. I see D. Williams. You're more than welcome to speak. D. Williams.
Hi there. Thank you so much for putting on this session.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, so you wanted a little description?
Yeah, just
some of those roles.
Yeah. Anything.
Okay, so I would agree that the trustees are at the top of your chart there. I would even put the Ministry of Education because they hold the funding. Yeah. So I would say they have a bit of power over all of this, but the trustees take care of policy. They're responsible for the governance, for the budget of the board. So the Director of Education basically reports to the trustee, and is responsible for all of the operational pieces and the staff, etc.
Yep. It's a big deal.
Did you want me to go through the list or give
Yes,
someone
please.
else a turn? Okay.
Yeah, and if anyone else wants to jump in, please raise your hand and we'll have you jump in as well. Let's keep going.
The school superintendents, they're responsible for their principals, like managing the work of the principals, and the principals obviously is the leader, the instructional leader of the school, and really responsible for student safety, implementing the curriculum, like managing the teaching team. Guidance, my daughter's in grade 8, like I'm like watching all of this like in anticipation of what she's going into, so I'm not sure the responsibilities of guidance and what
I'll
their
just
role
jump in for
exactly is.
that. I'll just
Great,
jump
thank
into
you.
that. So,
Thanks.
so basically, the guidance role, right, is to kind of guide the students on educational paths. So it's not really for therapy or like everybody come in and think, oh, guidance is this resource that I use if I have like a mental health issue or you know what I mean, if I'm in a bad day. Yes, they can, you know what I mean, as regular people, they can have like a conversation with you. But their main role is to kind of focus on the academics of the student and make sure they're performing well.
And they gather all the data, right? So also, and this is a question, thank you, D. Williams, so much for sharing some of that information. Might have you jump back in here. How, in terms of when it comes to guidance, how might guidance play a role in the success of a Black student's educational career? And this is just a question to participants, to the facilitators, anybody.
And again, just raise your hand if you want to speak on the mic, and feel free to use the chat, you know, to give your answer.
So can you please repeat the question again? Sorry,
Yeah.
my name is Aline.
Absolutely. How might Black students be impacted by the guidance counselor? So we talked about the guidance counselor kind of, you know, supporting academics and kind of supporting students with course selections, or helping them on their way, guiding their educational careers. How might the role of the guidance counselor impact Black students in specifically?
I believe as the school, you know, especially for example in high school when they have clubs, and if they listen to what's happening, for example, if the student goes there and if the student share what is the need academically, what he needs, if he has any difficulty learning, or so if he share from his point of view what the school could provide for the students as clubs or anything else. Absolutely. To help him, and if they really listen and try to, in collaboration with the other students, because this is something is very important to, when it comes to from the student, but also can come from them, from the administration as well, if they see a need and how to help them.
Absolutely. So I'll give D. William, I see you having a hand up. Thank you so much, Eleni.
You're welcome.
Hi, thanks. It's Dee again. Yeah, I would love to hear more from the students on this as well. But my own experience, like going through the public education system in Toronto, is that this is a key piece, and a piece where anti-Black racism systemically gets played out with some guidance teachers kind of making recommendations to Black students that aren't necessarily in their best interest. So I would love to hear more about like what's happening with guidance now from some of the students that are on, if there's any shift in that. And also I'd like to hear like the positive aspects, because as I said, my daughter is in grade 8. So I'm really interested in what she might be landing into next September.
Absolutely.
Shami, yeah, okay, yeah, take a floor on this.
For me, I just graduated Westview, as I said before, but as I guess if I were to think as a grade 8 student, I would think guidance counselors have the ability to guide us in a negative way or a positive way. So they have the ability, for me as a Black student, when I was in grade 8, I really knew more about what I couldn't do than what I could do. And guidance counselors have the ability to change that narrative in my mind as I'm growing up through the high school, I guess, environment. And oftentimes they don't really do this. And I think that's not because they're not good people. It's honestly because they don't really get to know us on a personal level. So they group us all into, say, this group of Black people who is not doing, who's not on their books, versus a group of Black people that are on their books. And those Black people that aren't on their books are assumed to be all Black people. So based on that notion, not everybody gets, guidance counselors don't always guide people in the best ways possible because they don't know everybody personally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I agree. I totally agree with Shem. For me, I found that I had a bit of a different experience. Although I've heard, I mean, a lot of people be like, "Oh, I wanted to do this particular subject or do this particular field," but I mean, the guidance counselor like, "I don't think you could do this, right?" And it's been something throughout the Black community that Black students have experienced, and it's just a matter of microaggressions, right? Sometimes people think, I mean, that their suggestion is best and they're not offending you in any way. And it just really comes to kind of mindfulness and really checking that. But for me personally, I know that I'm involved in a lot of things within the school, and most of the teachers and the guidance know me. So in general, I just get like a positive experience from the school that I go to, and I go to Pearson, by the way, right? And just in general, I feel like they treat people good, right? Why would you just meet somebody and not treat them good? But yeah, it just depends on, you just have to kind of know what you want to do and have a backbone to be like, if they're trying to push you in a different direction, have a backbone to stand up for yourself and be like, this is what I want to do. I know I can do it. And stick to your guts.
Mm-hmm. And I think, D. Williams, you talked about your child being in grade 8. It's a very transitional year. And that relationship that your child has with the guidance counselor is key, because they will help them select their courses for high school. And I know that the system is working towards de-streaming, but I don't believe it's happened in every school. So there are still schools where you have academic, and you still have schools that have applied, you still have schools that have locally developed, and there's special education, there's all these things. And we also know that Black students are overrepresented in applied, and they're overrepresented in locally developed. And those are not pathways that lead directly to university. So if I'm a guidance counselor and I have a little bit of bias, or this Black student experienced challenges throughout their educational career, and by the time they get to me, I might look at their grades and I might make certain assumptions about where I think that they're capable of. That's when the streaming, and that's how the overrepresentation kind of happens. But like Brittany said, not all guidance counselors are like that. There's lots of guidance counselors in the TDSB right now actively working to kind of correct some of that work. So there is some positivity. There's a positive outlook on how things can change. Yes.
And just to add something real quick too, right? As Alana and Shem was saying, right? Sometimes we don't have a personal connection with the guidance counselor because we're not involved in, extracurricular activities. We don't even go to the guidance office, you know what I mean? The resources there, we don't use it, right? We only go when it's time to select courses, you know what I mean? So really having that experience with the guidance counselor, kind of building that relationship, really kind of helps guide, like build a relationship, so they know, okay, you're interested in this from like the course that you're taking, from what you tell me. So then based on that, they can make recommendations. So, you know what I mean? If they see you taking a certain amount of courses, as Alana is saying, right? They're going to be recommending a certain career path. So it also depends on that, and not just biases, right?
Another point too, just to add, I think to what Lana was saying, to have your child go on the right path, also not only for your child to have a relationship with your guidance counselor, but for the parents themselves to have a relationship. Because if you're a student going from grade 8 to grade 9, you're going to be pretty naive when it comes to this high school experience. Mm-hmm. And having a parent being able to check those guidance counselors that are doing those Black students dirty will be important.
Absolutely. I love it. Okay, I'm going to read some comments from the chat box. Apologies for not getting to those sooner. And just a couple, because I do see that there's an active conversation here. So thank you so much for participating in that. Guidance should, this one's from Sharon B. Guidance should provide Black students and their parents up to speed with exciting new opportunities so they can keep on course with their academic pathways rather than just providing basic status quo information. And I definitely agree with that. I do think that, you know, some students, they have younger siblings that they have to take care of. Some Black students are having very negative experiences within the TDS system because of the low expectation, because of the bias, because of the exclusion that they experience. So not all students are in an environment where they feel comfortable participating or getting to know. So when those barriers exist, it is really important for us as a school system to, again, create those conditions. So I think it's important that, yeah, they should provide this information to people. Esther says, we have to be advocates and teach them to advocate for themselves. It goes back to Brittany's point that, you know, it sucks that sometimes we're in situations where we have all these responsibilities already, and then we have to kind of go out of our way to advocate for ourselves, especially when we're in buildings where we hope that folks would advocate for us. And also, you know, I'll say guidance counselors, like, all the roles are stretched, especially right now with virtual school and the whole system kind of rearranging. It's really tough right now, but I would say now more than ever, it's really important that Black students and parents advocate for themselves. So 100. So I'm just going to fly through the rest of this activity, and we're going to move on to the other one. It's going to get into some policy pieces. So yes, we talked about the guidance counselor. Then we have the teachers responsible for student learning. We have social workers, child and youth workers, and child and youth counselors. All schools, I believe, and this, I know some of this stuff is kind of high school based. Some of these roles aren't necessarily within elementary schools, but I believe all elementary schools do have a social worker. I think the high schools might have a child, but you know what? Don't even quote me on that. They might also have those roles. But I know the school safety monitor, which is the person that kind of walks the halls and makes sure that students get to, to class. They are kind of, you know, not necessarily given a lot of power, but they do have power when it comes to profiling, or when it comes to, some have really good relationships with students, because if you're connecting with a student in the hallway, that's an opportunity to kind of connect with them in a different way outside of the classroom too. So it can be varying. And then you have students and families. However, I would say that students and families should definitely be at the top of this. And why might folks think that students and families, why should they be at the top of this hierarchy? Yep, we got D. Williams, raise the hand.
Hi there, it's Dee again.
Yes.
Yeah, why should, well, students like really are at the core and the top of all of this, the whole education system, because it's their education. We're here, you know, as parents, staff, whatever, to help the students with their success, their academic achievement, their well-being. As a parent, I would have to say, like, as the actual taxpayer into the education system, like I believe the education system is really like technically responsible to the parent, and the supporters of public education who may not be parents who are paying into this tax system that support education. So like some of the responsibility and accountability pieces are to those stakeholders that are actually paying into this. But the core of it is actually the students.
Absolutely. And who votes for the trustees?
The parents.
Right? And if you're over 18, students too, right? So I think that's really important too, that everyone understands that the trustees, the people who actually hire the director of education, they're like city councilors, they're elected officials. So it's really important, you know, if I were to ask every parent, and this is the question that I asked the young people that I worked with, or that I continue to work with, I always ask them, do you know who your school trustee is for the community that you live in, and or for the school that your child goes to, because your child might go to a school that's outside of your ward. You know what I mean? And would you know? Put your hand up if you know who your trustee is. Or you can also put a T in the chat box too. Okay, so we've got a few hands. That's really good. Okay.
Wait, Alana, somebody in the chat, I think Roland said not everybody has voting rights. What do you mean by that?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rolanda.
Oh, Rolanda, sorry about the mispronunciation.
It's okay. It's a good question. Citizenship, very important point.
Okay.
Very important point. So if you are here as a newcomer, if you're undocumented, yes, you don't have the opportunity to vote. And that's a really good, important point too, because it talks about the layers of challenges and barriers that families face. If I'm Black, if I'm undocumented, how does that affect my educational opportunities and my options? Do you know what I mean? How as a student am I able to go to university if I come from a low income family as well, and I can't pay for university as an international student, which the rates are much higher. So there are a disproportionate amount of students with parents who do not vote and can't participate in those options. Very good point. Very good point, Rolanda. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing it up so we can acknowledge that. I think that's key. And we know that communities of color kind of face that barrier more than other communities as well. So it is something that the system needs to acknowledge. How can parents that don't have the same rights as people that are recognized as Canadian citizens, how can we remove those barriers so that those students and families can participate and have a say in the way that the organization is run? Very important point. Okay, we're going to go on to the next activity just in the interest of time. But thank you all so much for participating and sharing your comments on that.
So next we're gonna do a true or false activity. So we know that navigating the system also requires knowing, having knowledge about the impacts, that policies and practices, especially the effects of policies and practices, especially the ones that affect Black students the most. So we're gonna read 5 scenarios, and this is kind of like an interactive activity. So we'll encourage you to please put a T in the chat box if you think the scenario is true, or put a F in the chat box if you think the scenario is false. And then afterwards, we'll explain the correct answer and dive more into the scenario.
All right, so our first question is, can guidance withhold students' timetables if activity fees have not been paid yet? I'll give you guys a couple moments to answer that, and I will.
Okay, got a few falses here. I would hope not. I know, right? You've got quite
so yes, the answer is false. All students are required by provincial law to be in school under the age of 18. Therefore, their timetables cannot be withheld. Also, if families cannot afford the fees, they can request the fees to be waived, and you shouldn't have any repercussions for that question.
Absolutely. Brittany, Shem, have any of you ever experienced that? And I'll also ask families that have joined, have you ever experienced a situation where a timetable has been held because the activity fee hasn't been paid?
I know that it hasn't happened to me, right? Because I wish I didn't have to pay, but it hasn't happened to me, but I've heard of situations where they've said before that, okay, if you don't pay for your timetables, you can't get your yearbook, you can't get this, you can't get that. So they're like, you can't get you don't get your timetable, so you don't know which class you're gonna go to. So I've heard of situations like that. They've said that before. I don't know if they actually put it in place. But I do know that you could talk to your principal or whatnot, pay half the fee, or kind of have your parents and them work it out. But for me personally, I have not experienced that.
I agree with Britannia. I also have not experienced that. I experienced the no yearbook situation and things like that. But there was an important question I saw in the chat. What is the process to like get that waiver?
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important question. And I think it's really important that we understand that ultimately education is a right. Okay. And that's why even students that might not have, like, that's why when students enroll, you're not supposed to be asked about your citizen status, because all children in Ontario or in Canada under 18 have a right to go to school. So what is the process? Because I've definitely connected with students who have told me that their timetable has been withheld. And I don't necessarily think it's a malicious thing. Sometimes people don't know, but everyone, for what a lot of people are saying, you're not allowed to do that. So say if I'm a family and I can't afford the student activity or the course to be cost, all you have to do is just let the principal know, let the teacher and the principal know that you're experiencing financial hardship, and that that fee should be waived, and it should be waived confidentially, or in a confidential manner. Anyways, I don't even know what I'm saying, but yeah, it should be completely confidential. So you should never feel bad about it. It would just be a matter of you connecting with the principal. And I know that we're doing virtual, so sometimes it's kind of hard to know who your principal is, or you might not be able to walk into the office. So if you Google your child's school's name, the principal will be somewhere on the website. It's usually, especially if it's the TDSB web, it's right there. And you can just email them directly and let them know. Does anybody know how much the fee is?
No, I have no idea.
But also speaking on everything being virtual, right? For this year, I don't even know how the fee's gonna look, because I haven't paid any fees so far. And because I know we have to pay for our yearbook, so I don't know how they're gonna do it. They haven't really I guess come up with a solution or figured that out yet. But you know what I mean, hopefully soon. You know what I mean? Hopefully we don't have to pay for no yearbooks this year still.
You never know. Anyways, we'll go on to the next one. I think the fee, how much did you pay in your fee when you were in grade 9 or 10, Britannia?
I think I paid like $45 or something. Yeah, I think $45 or
Okay.
I don't remember, but yeah, probably I'm lying. Probably I forgot. I don't know.
No,
But I
sounds
think
right.
that's what I remember.
Absolutely. And Dee Williams just shared a really important resource too. TDSB .on.ca/leadership /trustees to have some more information about about that. Yeah, $20.93. I could have sworn mine was like 25 too. I'm sure they're like $100 now, inflation, but that's okay. We'll go on to the next one.
Yeah, so the next scenario is, if my child fails a course, they have to repeat it the following year. And the same thing applies. True if you think, T if you think it's true, and F if you think it's false.
Okay. And I know some of these questions are high school based, but we also have ones that are general for K to 12 too. I believe the next couple of ones, the next three are why this one might be a little bit, because I know in primary they don't hold back. Okay, so we've got quite a few trues and we've got a false.
Okay. All right, yeah. True, it depends upon the course. It's mandatory. So in general, high school students have to complete a certain amount of credits in order to graduate, right? But that aside, the answer is false. And this is because you have credit recovery. When you do not successfully pass a course, anything below a 50%, your principal will work together with you and your parent to determine how to best meet the course expectation and earn the course credit. Arrangements will be made so that one of the following is available. You may be allowed to repeat only the material related to the curricular expectations that were not achieved, only if you have achieved a 35 to a 49%. And just like kind of speaking on that 35 to the 49%, because I know that I've kind of experienced this in a sense, and I know that a lot of people, I mean, if they didn't get this mark, they couldn't go to summer school. So if you don't get a 35 to a 49, then you have to completely repeat the course. But if you get like a mark in between that range, then you could possibly go to summer school and just, I mean, recover the credit over summer. So that's really important. If you're failing the course and you think the course is super hard, just kind of hold out and try to get a mark in between that area, so then you can at least just do half in summer school, and then you could go ahead and take your regular courses in day school
Absolutely.
after summer is over.
Yeah.
And it says, if available, you can enroll in a remedial program designed for a group of students with similar needs. You may also decide to repeat the entire course, which I'm saying, right? So if it's that you want to, well, technically you can't, from my experience, if you got a 35 to a 49, you just automatically qualify to credit recovery and go to summer school. So I believe to repeat the entire course, you just have, if you get anything below that, then it's mandatory for you to repeat the course, because then you didn't even meet near to the course expectation. So you have to just take it in day school, or probably just do a full thing in summer school. I'll advise personally for people to just go to summer school, get it over with, so then you're not in a class with people that are a year younger than you, and you don't feel uncomfortable, and just get it done in summer, because most times, I don't know, like most times you're not working, you know what I mean, or whatnot. Just get it over with if you have the time.
Absolutely. Shem, I see that you wanted to.
Yeah, another thing too is in my school, Westview, it was a credit recovery school. So they actually had a class where if you were failing multiple courses, where you could kind of like get done. So say I had grade 10 history and then grade 10 math I failed. I would be able to do both those courses in one semester and be able to get up to 6 credits in one semester to try and catch up to where I need to be at my age level.
Amazing. And I think this is something that, Black students overall, when it comes to credit accumulation, we are the way that our students are collecting credits aren't at the same rate as students that are not Black. And this again is for a lot of systemic or different types of challenges that are unique to Black students. But I think that, when I was in high school, I didn't know about credit recovery. And even if I had like a 35 and up, I didn't know that all I had to possibly do was just connect with my teacher and ask to be able to redo a specific assignment, or to even consider taking summer school. So sometimes these options aren't necessarily available, but it is really important to connect with the principal, connect with the teacher, and to find out what can be done. The teacher might not want to, but you might, as a parent, feel that you have a right to have the option to do credit recovery. So then again, that's when you would connect with the principal.
Yeah, and also with that, right?
Document these things. Yes.
Oh, also with that, I just want to say that I've heard like experiences, right? Especially during the summer, when people were like, oh, teachers were trying to fail people because of COVID, and you didn't have to do the rest of the work when you were at home, right? So people were trying to fail people. And if you feel like if your child feels like he or she's being marked unfairly, like they send in a test, and I mean, it feels like they should have got a higher mark, they can also go to the head of the department and have them remark that assignment, and see what they decide from there, and kind of talk to the principal and talk to your parents, get them involved in that situation where the teacher, I mean, feels like, oh, you skipped too much classes, or this that, I'm failing you, because straight out I've heard like teachers to students like, I'm failing you, you're not gonna pass. So it's just that situation where you just have to kind of reach out to the head of the department, kind of talk to the principal, and get your parents involved in that way.
Absolutely. I think that's important. So, aside from credit recovery, you can appeal final marks as well. And Brittany was talking about when the school shut down, there was a 60%. If you had a 60% or more, or no, whatever your mark was before the closures, if it was 60% or more, it had to remain the same, right? Was that what it was, Shem?
Yeah, I think it was March 14th is when they closed down the schools.
Yes. And that policy didn't necessarily translate.
Your mark could only go up, it could never go down. So that was, yeah.
Exactly, right? And sometimes that, and I also see Randy asked a question, does it depend on the course? Credit recovery is available for all courses, okay? Especially the core one, the core subjects. Okay, so we don't have very much time. We have 15 minutes and we still wanna have 10 minutes for Q&A. So we're gonna try to get through the next 3 scenarios in about 5 minutes. We're gonna try to fly through these. Okay.
So the next question is, are all teachers aware of the IEP accommodations that their students are in need of? True or false, if you guys think.
An IEP is individualized education plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've got some falses here. Okay, I'm gonna go directly to it. That's both true and false. Definitely, some teachers are aware, sometimes they're not aware, but the question was, sorry, what was it? They're supposed to be aware, but I would say not all teachers have in-depth understanding of what is in a child's individualized education plan. And as you may know, Black students are overrepresented with individualized education plans. And it goes again to expectations. A lot of these IEPs that Black students have, they might have behavior plans. And again, that Black students are overrepresented because we know that, you know, when a Black child does something and a non-Black child does something, the behavior of the Black child is seen as more criminal than the other child. The other child is just seen as a regular child, I guess, or regular childlike behavior. So often Black students are put on behavioral plans. So it's really important to know what's in that IEP. But at the end of the day, that's a legal document. And it's important for teachers to be aware of that, and it's important for them to create activities and to put the necessary resources in place so that that child can get access to that. So I'm not gonna read all of this. What I will do though at the end of this session is we will share, yes, they're seen as more aggressive. We'll share this presentation with you so you can go through and read that and have that for your stuff. So I'll put that in when we start the Q&A. I'm just gonna go to the next one, okay, Shem?
Wait, but just to, before you go, I say the next one, like teachers will come in the classroom like, who has an IEP? You know what I mean? They're supposed to be made aware of that. And it's supposed to be confidential too, right? You're not supposed to be just coming in front of the class, who has an IEP? Or, you know what I mean? It's things like that. It you know what I mean? It kind of calls people out and probably make them feel weird and all that, uncomfortable. So the first day of school, who has an IEP? You know what I mean? That's kind of like one of the statements that you hear a lot of the times.
Absolutely. So a family tip sheet is also a good idea, because even though I'm saying that teachers should be aware, I will say that teachers are stretched to some extent too. And it's always helpful that if you and your child are very aware of what's in the IEP, for you to create like a little tip sheet and let the teacher know what works well for your child. And then that tip sheet can be given every time you go to, you have at the beginning of the school year with a new teacher.
True. And remember, the teachers are like kind of way at the bottom of everything. So they get information last, and students even worse, you know what I mean? So we have to kind of be mindful of that too. But yeah, for the next scenario.
Not way at the bottom, okay.
Yeah.
They're
not way at the bottom, but they're down there, you know what I mean? And then students are way even worse. But let's just move on to the next scenario. So if I am suspended and think it is unfair, I can complain and appeal to have it removed from my record.
Okay.
So if you're suspended and you think it's unfair, have it be appealed from your record.
Okay. Absolutely. We've got quite a few truths.
Yep.
Yes, it is true.
Yeah, for that, the answer is true. So are we going to go into this one, or we're just gonna, yeah, just we'll share we'll share it with you guys. But I feel like the key thing to keep in mind is have a witness, you know what I mean, have somebody that is witness, you know what I mean, what went down. Take notes as soon as you something happens. Make sure the person that's beside you or wherever, have them write down something. Take notes. um just keeping track of things. And the most important thing, the most vital thing, is to get things done in time, because this appeal process, it happened, it's just a small window, and if you miss that window, it's gone, right? So most of the times it's like you have to get it in by 10 days, but we'll share the slides with you so you can have that information. But yeah, take notes and make sure you get things done on time.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important that, you know, I've been in situations where I've connected with students and their parents didn't even know that they were suspended. And I don't know how the communication, maybe the school attempted to notify the parents, but the parents weren't aware. And the child was sent home and they just thought that the child was sent home. So I think it's really important to always kind of check the Ontario student record. And you just do that by sending an email to the teacher or to the principal or to the secretary or the, I should say, office administrator at your child's school and ask for the information or ask for a copy. That's always your right to know what's in the child's Ontario student record. So yes, that's really important. So yeah, written notice. And again, we'll share that information. People have questions. Okay. Okay, so this is some more stuff on suspension rights.
Oh yeah, and tone, I think somebody was saying tone and body language. I think that was in regards to the suspension. Yes, for real. You know what I mean? Sometimes we're like, oh, we know our rights and we get all braggadocious, and you know what I mean, we get all uppity. But another thing too is to keep your composure, right? You know you're right, just be assertive, you know? Don't be all passive aggressive, be like, oh, that man over there, or this, that. You know what I mean? Sometimes we know our rights and we're like, we get carried away. So keep our composure. That's another thing too, right? Because
Fairly
yeah.
too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not
You're angry, but try to keep the composure and just, you know what I mean, take notes and get things done on time.
Okay, 10 days. Okay.
Okay, so our next scenario is if I identify as trans, the school can change my legal name to my preferred name on my OSR.
Okay. So before we determine if this is true or false, I think it's just really important to identify the word trans. So trans is a person whose sense of identity or gender doesn't correspond to their birth sex. And again, we already talked about the OSR, Ontario Student Record. So this really is in regards to pronouns too, right? So if people see me, you know, as feminine or female, but I want to use the pronouns he, him, or her, or maybe I don't even want to use pronouns. Am I allowed to do that? Or am I allowed to change my legal name, or am I allowed to ask my teachers to use the preferred name or pronouns that I want them to use? We've got lots of falses. Okay, and one I don't know. Okay, so what is the answer?
So transgender or non-conforming students have the right to be who they are openly. This includes expressing gender identity without fear and unwanted consequences, and the right to be treated with dignity and respect. Board and school staff must consider each student's need and concern separately. Transgender and gender non-conforming students have an unique individual needs and accommodations that works for one student but might not work for the other.
Absolutely.
I actually had a question. If
Yeah.
someone was considered themselves a transgender
Mhm.
and they were under the age of 18, would the school need the parent consent to change their name, or is that just in the student's control?
That's a good question. From my understanding, you don't need the parent's consent, but I don't 100% know for sure on that. Um, at the end of the day, I know it's a right to students, for students from kindergarten all the way to grade 12, for them to have the rights to openly be who they are. So because I know that that's a right that's specific, I can only assume and assert that that student wouldn't need the permission of their parent to be called um, whatever pronoun. Now, I'm not saying that the student and the legal name change. That's a good question.
It's not a legal name to change. So the name that you use in school is not gonna be the same name that you go outside of school and they call you that same name in your community or whatnot, unless you kind of identify that. But the changes, for my understanding, is just supposed to be within the school, the teachers and I guess staff and students, right? Correct?
Well, I know that I do believe that's correct, though, that it could be a legal issue, and it does say here, after legal documentation of a name change, TDS
Okay.
schools will change a student's official records. So when it comes to the name change, it looks like, according to policy, that you would have to legally get the name changed. However, I do know that when it comes to pronouns,
Yeah, that's different.
regardless of gender, yeah, and regardless of whether a student has obtained a name change, the preferred pronoun must be used. And even calling a student a name that might not match their pronoun, that might make them feel uncomfortable too. So we'll say that it comes down to gender and identity rights. And when you're Black, and if you identify as trans, there's additional unique challenges that that student is experiencing. So this is something to kind of help with that. There's lots of policies. TDSB has an anti-Black racism policy that has policies on religious accommodations. It has policies on like what you're able to wear, and which really is saying that students should be able to wear what they would like to wear. So there's lots of policies that have been in place. The question is how well are staff kind of informed on these policies, and how well are these policies being protected within school spaces? Some, it's more apparent than others. So we're going to open it up we have about 3 minutes, I'm sorry, for some questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen. So yes, are there any questions that folks have? You can share them in, you know what, and that's a good question. There's a question about the nickname. No, some teachers let you use your nicknames. And I'm going to get the presentation link for everyone too.
May I make a few comments?
Yes, please.
I think it's really important that when you have Black students in schools, that there's a lot of biases that can come up with their own personal ones, as well as the staff that are in the building. And it's really important that parents are always involved actively. I know by the time kids get to high school, they're like, no, I don't need my parent to be around. And parents aren't necessarily advocating as much for their students when they get to high school. But I would assert that by the time they get to high school, that's when Black students need their parents the most to help advocate for them. One of the first things kids should do as a Black student, I think, is go and meet the guidance counselor, let them know what your goals are. And that way, because the guidance counselors are gatekeepers to a lot of information that can support and help students, whether it be scholarships, volunteer opportunities, different programs that are out there. And if guidance counselors, they may have 300 kids that they are supposed to be counseling, they can't meet anybody. So if a Black student goes out of their way proactively to build a relationship with that guidance counselors, then they can think, oh, you know what, this would be the perfect scholarship for that kid. I know they really want to go into engineering. And it's also important to go in and say, you know what, in the future, I want to go to university. This is the pathway that I'm choosing. And, you know, I want to go in this field. Can you make me aware of any information that supports that? I know when I was in school, teachers tried to stream me into a business and technical school, and I always knew that I was going to go to university. And had I not had parents to support me, I would be, you know, doing a trade, which there's nothing wrong with trades, but you got to know where you want to go, and you need your parents to help support you in what your goal is, so that you can then articulate that to guidance counselors, teachers, whatever, so that they have the same high expectations for you as you do for yourself or your child. The other thing is that we need to teach our kids how to code switch, so that when we're in situations where we're upset, that we can speak so that the other person that we're upset at can actually hear what we're saying and actually come up with a constructive way of helping us rectify the situation. When you were talking about credit recovery, a lot of biases are put in place towards students, unfortunately, that prevent them from going into credit recovery. And it's one thing to know that credit recovery is available, but the teacher is supposed to suggest that you can go into credit recovery. So if you don't have a good relationship with the teacher, then they may not support you to getting you to be able to quickly earn credits quickly. So I think it's really important. And then if you're not getting what you want, then you go up the chain of command, which is like the department head, the vice principal, the principal, superintendent, trustee, until you actually find somebody that's going to listen to you and, you know, help move whatever the issue is forward in a way that's going to be satisfactory to yourself and your child.
Absolutely. That's what it is. Those emails, teacher, okay, maybe the relationship is strained with the teacher, and then we go have a conversation with the principal. If you're still not getting any support, like Josette, and I think I know that, Josette, I think I know you. So awesome that you're here. I'm like, that voice sounds so familiar.
Hi, Lana.
I know you. Okay, we do know each other.
Just remember, and I guess, again, just remember to be assertive, people. Don't, you know what I mean? People be getting on our nerves, you know what I mean, although we know our rights. But just be assertive, and don't, you know what I mean, don't try to bully nobody. You know what I mean?
Here's something else.
Because sometimes we get, like, parents get real protective, right? You know what I mean?
We're gonna go on to the next one, and we're not gonna reinforce stereotypes, Britannia.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just mean, like, in general, sometimes if you send too much email, people might think, oh, you're being aggressive. You're sending, you know what I mean? You're insulting me or this. I really am not trying to get in stereotypes, because I know that my dad in particular, and parents, just, you know what I mean, that parental instinct, if you feel like somebody's doing wrong against your child, you know what I mean, in general.
But I do think that it's also fair that, you know, to expect a response within a reasonable time frame too. And I think it's, you know, I know that things are a little bit mad right now, and I know that everyone's kind of receiving a lot of emails because of the virtual stuff. So I will say that's a good point to take into consideration, Brittany, in terms of it will take people a lot longer to get back to you now than before because of the virtual setting that stuff up. But it is getting better. The backlogs are getting cleared because things are starting to get up and running. But I know that some students just got teachers like a week ago. So it took a while. Okay, so there's another question about what is happening with the new TDSB Center of Excellence for Black Student and Achievement. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but that is a new center that has been approved. There's the Urban Indigenous Center for Indigenous students, and now we have a whole center dedicated to Black student excellence. So that was initiated by a previous former Associate Director Colleen Russell Rollins, and also Executive Superintendent of Equity, and I just put her information here, Equity, Anti-Oppression, and Early Years. Jacqueline Spence is an amazing woman, and I just want to make sure, yeah, she's an executive system superintendent. So she's super high up there. I put her email in there because I haven't heard anything about that. And again, because of all of the transitions in terms of getting virtual schools set up and then also getting schools ready for in-person learning, that I don't know what progress has been made, but I know that the budget has been passed and it is something that is happening. So to get probably a more direct update would probably be the best person I would think to connect is Jacqueline Spence, and her email's in the chat box. Now we also have parent is the first student guidance. Absolutely, it's critical. Resources and tips and tactics to support Black students. I do have a folder for Black families to support Black students. And I think a lot of it was from Dr. Carl James. So I'm going to find that folder now. Are there any other questions while I look for that folder? Navigating, oh, I found the folder. Okay, here is the folder. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, thank you so much, Randy. Wanted to say thank you so much to everyone for joining us.
There's another person with their hand up.
Absolutely. Okay, yes, we have one. Go ahead, Brittany.
I don't know how to, wait.
Hi,
Okay, go ahead.
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, I just want to stress about the guidance part. I think it's very, very, very important for parents to be involved with the guidance counselor also, because we have to remember that yes, they're getting older, yes, they need responsibility, but then again, they are still kids and they're still under 18, and we're still responsible for them as a parent. I had issues with my son's guidance counselor, so right now I made a request that anytime she does have a discussion with my child, they have to let me know, because I don't trust them. She was leading my child the wrong way, and I was not happy about that. So for the students out there, get your parents or somebody that you trust as an adult to be with you and be with you when and know the discussions that you're having with your guidance counselor. Don't keep it to yourselves. Parents need to be involved at all times. You know, that's all I want to say. I have to stress that importance with the guidance, because everybody thinks, oh, when they go into grade 9, they're on their own, they know what they want to do. And no, that's not the case. They're still children. They're still under 18, and they're still, we're still responsible. Yes, the children need to make their bit, but you need another adult to help guide your child. Like, sorry, that's a lot.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'm so sorry that you had that experience. And it's unfortunate because I know that you're not the only parent that's experiencing those challenges. And, there's some really good guidance counselors out there that have really great relationships with students. And like Josette said, are able to guide them and give them the resources that help. And they would be resources connected to the path that the parent would like them. But then sometimes the relationship is really negative, or even the intention might be good, but sometimes the impact is not so good. So I'm sorry that you had that experience, but you're absolutely right. I agree with you. High school is so critical. The challenges and barriers intensify in high school sometimes than they do in the primary years. So that definitely is a really important time to have parents and community leaders, anyone really that is positive and has a positive impact, to be a part of that process. Okay, got another wonderful comments. Thank you all so much for your comments. I'm a social worker and a college professor. This is from Talisa. I've also done social work within a high school. I would encourage getting connected with your social work within your school or your CYW to help advocate also. Very important point. CYWs, the child and youth counselors, very, very powerful resources within your school to find out who your child and youth worker is, to find out who your social worker is, to find out who your child and youth counselor is. Again, that's an email to the teacher and to the principal. But I would say, even if your child is having a wonderful time at school, I would still get in touch, because often these people are doing really cool leadership initiatives. Also find out who your student equity program advisor is. They're leading really good stuff, and to connect with them to find out what they might be doing in your school is really important and really helpful in staying connected and developing relationships within the school. Yes. Okay, we've got lots of congratulations. Thank you all so much for coming through. Big up to Shem and Brittany for sharing your experiences, and big up to Shem again, graduating despite the challenges and barriers. Trenton University in Peterborough, right? First year, that's what's up.
Very much, thank you.
And Brittany too, all the leadership stuff in grade 12, getting ready. Amazing. Thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful afternoon. Happy Sunday. All right, take care.
All right, y'all. I'll catch you later.
Yeah, thanks again, everybody.
Bye.
Take care. Thanks, Shem. You guys are awesome.